We'll call our meeting to order. First item is invocation by Pastor Don Tidjum of the Prescott Valley Church of God. And then after that, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance by Alan Graham.
Please join me in prayer. Loving Heavenly Father, thank you for this wonderful country that we live in. Thank you for this beautiful state that you have set our borders in. Thank you for this beautiful community of Prescott Valley and for the desires of this council to acknowledge you and your presence, wisdom, knowledge. Father, we need everything that you can give us. When most of the country is saying we want less of God, this is a community saying we want more. We want more of your blessings, more of your wisdom, more of your rule, and definitely more of your peace. We pray for our first responders that deal with our public. We pray, number one, for their safety, but also for their compassion. And Father, we pray for this council, that as they lead this wonderful community, that you would endow them with a wisdom that is beyond their own. And as you give us more, may we be willing to bless this community with more ourselves. As President Kennedy once said, ask not what this nation can do for you, but what you can do for this nation. May we have that same desire here in this community. We need more of you, Father. More of your presence here. Bring it, we pray, in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor.
Please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, the next item is the roll call. Diane?
Mayor Skoog.
Present.
Vice Mayor Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Grossman.
Here.
Councilmember Mallory.
Here.
Councilmember Marshall.
Here.
Councilmember Nye.
Here.
Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you, Diane. Next item is scheduled announcements and presentations. Healing Fields Certificate of Appreciation.
Talk in the mic.
Talk into it, Mary.
Well, it's nice to see everybody here tonight. And tonight I have an opportunity to thank a few of our local businesses that every year for the past 4 years have come up and helped with the foundation of the Healing Field, the field that you come and see on 9/11. And these companies are always there every year to contribute what they can to make this such a beautiful event for a week. So at this time, I'd like to ask, is Kohl's here? Oh, Kohl's, I'd like for a representative from Kohl's to come up, please. We have Walmart coming up. We have Stony Creek Builders. I'd like all of you to come up, please. And Dennis Edwards with Cable One. These are businesses that you see and deal with a lot on a daily basis. Stony Creek, family-owned, beautiful family, great contributor to the community. Chris Moody, a long time ago, used to be my store director for Albertsons, and he was a great store director. And a lot of the reason that I do the things I do today is really because of that man. he saw things in me that I didn't see and helped me with the cookies for the troops. And he was really the driving force on that program. And like the Healing Field, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of cookies to send out to those guys and gals. But you know what? He said, we can do this. And you know what? He was right. We did it. We did it as a community, and we did it for 10 years. And we did over 400,000 cookies to those guys and gals fighting that war, and still over there now. So I really appreciate Chris. And now he's here helping with the Healing Field. So he's like, Mary, you're always getting into something, and I am. And I thank you, Chris, and your family, and Bob, and all of you. His men have come out every year, and they do all the help with all of the rebar, and they're a great crew. So I thank you guys again so much for everything. Walmart, another great, great community builder. Kevin helped me in the first 2 years. He reached out to every Walmart in the northern area, and every Walmart contributed to that field. And I mean thousands of dollars to that field. I don't know if anybody realizes, but that field was over a $60,000 project. That's a lot of money. But that's what this community does. When there's an effort to come forward and remember those, that's what we do. And we do a good job of it. So again, Kevin, with his team from Walmart, every year out there volunteering. This year, they were the ones that stepped up and got those T-shirts for the volunteers. And I just appreciate them so much for what they do in this community. Dennis Edwards with Cable One. What an amazing man. I remember the first day that I showed up in his office. I brought Kirk with me, of course, and I had that video that I've showed everywhere. And I wanted to show him this video, and I wanted him to help me get the word out to everybody about it, and if Cable One could help. You know, every year since then, 4 years, Cable One, Dennis Edwards, he contributes a monetary donation of $500, and for 30 days he runs a commercial that promotes the event that we do here in Prescott Valley. And what an interesting thing that happened this year, I got a call from the Tempe Healing Field group, and apparently they had seen your commercial, Dennis, and it was on Fox channel. I don't know how it got there, but that was great. I like that. And so she said, how did you get a commercial on Fox? And I said, well, I just reached out to Dennis Edwards at Cable One, and he said he'd do this for me, and so it does. And they go, well, we can't even get that done. But you know what? That's what this community, again, does. They step up to the plate. You only have to ask, and we're there. They are there. And I love the fact that we gather together for the best reason of all, to remember. So again, I thank you, Dennis, so much. You and your company, you do an amazing job, and I appreciate all that you do. Last but surely not least, Kohl's. I love Kohl's. Love Kohl's. And I love Kohl's Cash, too. So, but let me tell you, Kohl's has put in thousands of dollars also to this field. They do a lot of volunteer work in the back office on their break time. They do a lot of volunteer work for this field over 4 years. They're also out there every year again, volunteering, helping to put up the flags, taking the flags down, and just helping in general for anything that they can do. You can't ask for more than this kind of contribution from the businesses that come and join our community here in Prescott Valley. We are a family. We are a family with the businesses that we bring here. We work together, and we all benefit from all of this. So again, I'd like to thank Kohl's for the last 4 years of their constant donation, time, and money into this field. And when we go around our local businesses, remember these folks, because they give back to their communities on a daily basis. And I really wanted that to be brought out, because without these people and without the people in this whole community, all of you out here, that field wouldn't be here today. And we wouldn't have the honor to remember those people and to give them the honor and not forget them. So again, thank you so much.
I certainly want to thank all of you folks. And the way to thank them is to stop at their business, patronize them. Thank you again. Okay, now we'll move on to wastewater treatment plant number 5B. Rebate from APS. So, Matt, it's good to see you.
Matt Meyerbochtel, Key Account Manager for APS, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. I'm here today on behalf of APS to present a $23,000 energy efficiency check to the town of Prescott Valley and Neil Wadsworth for all of the energy efficiency retrofits and custom projects that he's completed at the wastewater treatment plant. Neil?
Yeah, on behalf of the town, we'd like to thank APS for being a partner with us in this. And, it's real nice to implement energy efficiency type projects so that we can save our citizens more money in the future. But it's even nicer when we're getting paid money, to do it as well. So that reduces our cost in implementing these things and provides ongoing savings moving forward. So, again, we appreciate APS, and thank you, Matt.
Great partnership. Thank you.
Matt, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Neil, appreciate the good work you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on into PVPD VIP recognition. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity to recognize one of our volunteers in policing. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to face this way for just a moment. For those who might not be aware, our police department is fortunate to be staffed with a lot of dedicated people who volunteer their time and service to this community. We call them volunteers in policing, or VIPs for short. They work in patrol, records, investigations, and at our police range, to name a few. Tonight, it's my privilege to recognize Alan Graham, whom I met many years ago when we first put up the healing field of Northern Arizona. So Alan's been a volunteer in our town for many years. And recently, as a patrol volunteer, Alan did something that might seem insignificant to some, but is a great example of how our volunteers work with us and this community to help make Prescott Valley a safer place to live, work, and play. On September 29, 2015, at about 11:40 in the morning, a liquor theft was called in at the local CVS pharmacy. Dispatch provided our responding officers with a description of the suspects. While employees at the CVS were reviewing surveillance video, Alan Graham spotted the suspects nearby. Alan maintained visual contact with the group of subjects and was able to supply good physical descriptions of those suspects and their clothing to our responding officers. The suspects traveled on foot westbound through parking lots and eventually ended up near the intersection of Florentine and Lake Valley Road, where they were apprehended by our officers. On a side note, I was actually on the street that day, not behind my desk, so thank you, Alan. I was able to help with that. This arrest would not have been possible without Alan's vigilance. Frequently, these types of crimes go unsolved, and the suspects unidentified because our officers can't make it to the area quickly enough to catch them. This is also a great example of how effective our volunteers in policing are in providing an additional set of eyes on our streets. Thank you, Alan. I have a certificate of appreciation for VIP Alan Graham, signed by myself and Chief Brian Jarrell.
Deputy Chief Edelstein, I just want to say that
A little closer to Mike.
I just want to say that when this happened and I called it in, and at a blink of an eye, there was a lot of officers showed up immediately. And I have nothing but respect for our police department and our police officers there. And ever since I became a volunteer police in policing and everything, I've been treated with nothing but respect from the officers there, which is quite an accomplishment, I think, for them to treat us that way. And it's very nice to have that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Alan. Keep up the good work. We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next is the Chamber of Commerce. Marnie?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council members. It's my pleasure to introduce some new businesses to you today, this evening. But first, I'd like to recognize a couple of my board members that are in the audience. Jeff Spohn, who's our chairman of the board, and another board member, Matt Zurcher. So with that, I would like to bring up Kevin Hilton.
Kevin Hilton with CrossFit Prescott Valley, located at 8301 East Jackie Drive. We've been in business in Prescott Valley for just a little over a year now. My wife and I started this business, just ourselves and a couple close friends. Since then, we've grown to over 60 plus members and 6 additional trainers. So the growth is happening rapidly. I get a lot of questions, what is CrossFit? It's really hard to answer. It's a lot better felt than telt. However, what we do is we're a core strength and conditioning program. We combine cardio with weightlifting with gymnastics movements, and it just really makes for a dynamic fitness. Our mission and goal is to not just change the way people look, but we want to really encourage people to understand what it's like to live a healthier life. And we do have a knowledgeable, dedicated professional staff that can help anybody reach their goals. Big question I get all the time is CrossFit for everyone? And the answer is, of course. CrossFit is nothing more than a way to achieve a fitness and healthy lifestyle. Using our training methods, it's just really something that we've designed to improve the quality of life, to increase overall health, and educate clients on not just how to move, but also how to take care of their bodies, what to eat, how much to eat, those kinds of things. They're all inclusive in our programs. So, like I said, our mission is just to be a partner in building a healthier community. We take that responsibility one client at a time, and we're super excited to be here and to grow with Prescott Valley. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I did.
And is Randy Reinhardt here? Randy, come on.
Come on down.
He snuck in on me, so I didn't see him come in. So our second business here, One Stop Party Store. And we love that place. You can buy everything there, all your party stuff. Hi, Randy. Come on.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Randall Reinhardt, and my wife Dawn and I opened up a new party shop here in town about 6 weeks ago. And I just want to give you a little history about myself. I came from California 4 years ago and worked retail for about 25 years. And when I first got started here, we decided to open up a company called Balance to Balance, which is a rental company that does inflatables, popcorn machines, and snow cone machines, and all that. And as we talked to all our customers over the last few years, they all said, hey, there's no place to go get party stuff. We have to go to Phoenix, try to get stuff online. So they gave us the idea of opening up one-shop party shop. And basically it has all your basic needs of paper plates, cups, napkins, all multi-different color within those things. But our main thing that we focus in is unique items as themed. We try to theme things like Tinkerbell, Hello Kitty, Avengers, Batman, Spider-Man, 50s and 60s themes, so you can have all your party supplies all at one place. And there's always a reason to party. Let's face it. We have birthdays, we have seasonal weddings, anniversaries, and all those kind of things. So I hope we can bring a niche to the community and bring a service for everyone. And we thank you very much for having us around, and hopefully many years to come. Thank you.
We're looking forward to that. Keep it up. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, I had a thought and then I almost forgot it. I wanted to echo your comments earlier after Mary introduced all the businesses supported the healing fields. Again, keep our local dollars in our community. Again, with two great businesses here, CrossFit, and then the party store, and then everything else that we have going on. There's really no reason to go anywhere else to shop. So keep our money here in Prescott Valley.
We've got it all, don't we, Marnie?
There. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Marnie. Appreciate that. Next, we have a proclamation, Manufacturers Month. We'll start with that. Whoever's representing there. Diane, you have the proclamation. Read it for us.
Yes, Mayor. Manufacturers Month, October 2015. Whereas manufacturing is a cornerstone of the economy, providing a sustainable foundation for a resilient economy and providing opportunities for families of all ages. And whereas manufacturers play a vital role in our statewide and local economy by creating jobs and producing innovative products with a local and a global demand. And whereas manufacturing presents significant potential for high-wage employment, offering various career opportunities for skilled and highly skilled workers, and whereas manufacturing affords the opportunity to increase exports, bringing dollars into the region, and creating economic vitality. And whereas Arizona is home to more than 4,500 manufacturers, employing more than 155,000 people, and exporting globally close to $20 million annually. And whereas the town of Prescott Valley recognizes and celebrates manufacturers as a vital contributor to the local economy and the well-being of the community. Now, therefore, I, Harvey C. Skoog, Mayor of the town of Prescott Valley, Arizona, do hereby proclaim October 2015 as Manufacturers Month.
Is there anyone here from the industry? The manufacturing is a production that we'd like to see brought back into the U.S. Thankfully, we have some here. We have a few companies that do it. And that provides a lot of good middle-income jobs. So we are after our federal government to bring back manufacturing. Okay, the next item we have is Arts and Humanities Month. I know we have a representative for that. Nancy, Frankie, Dr. Gibson, come on up. Hey, that's good to see you. Diane, you want to read the proclamation?
National Arts and Humanities Month, October 2015. Whereas the month of October has been recognized as National Arts and Humanities Month by thousands of arts and cultural organizations, communities, and states across the country, as well as by the White House and Congress for more than 2 decades. And whereas the arts and humanities embody much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind, and the arts and humanities enhance and enrich the lives of every American. And whereas the arts and humanities play a unique role in the lives of our families, our communities, and our country, and whereas the nonprofit arts industry also strengthens our economy by generating approximately $135.2 billion in total economic activity annually, and by supporting the full-time equivalent of 4.13 million jobs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Harvey C. Skoog, Mayor of Prescott Valley, do hereby proclaim October as National Arts and Humanities Month.
These two ladies, Nancy Smith, Dr. Frankie Gibson. Nancy, you got some comments?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Skoog. I just want to make a comment that in this past year, the Arts and Culture Commission has introduced 2 new programs that to Prescott Valley. One is our Theater on the Green free concerts, which will be quarterly. We just had the last one in September. And the other one was the Studio Art Tour, which happened this past weekend. We had 12 artists participating from Prescott Valley. So not only do we have the arts here that we can view, we also try and bring things to our citizens that they can participate in. And coming up next will be our annual Create a Tree that'll be in the library. The various organizations can create a holiday tree. That's the next event. December 4th, I think, is the day that it all opens up, and that they will be on display in the library all through the holiday season until December 31st. I think they have to be in place. They will be installed December 2nd and 3rd. Call the Parks and Rec Commission, and they will give you all the information, or go online, town website.
Dr. Gibson?
I don't talk as much as Nancy. I usually let my hair do my speaking. But I just say thank you. I'm delighted to be in this community and continue to support the arts.
Laura Lee?
Number one, I want to, thank the Vice Mayor for his sensitivity to let me come down here for this. These ladies bring such joy to our community. If you ever come to any of the events, I'm thinking particularly in March when all the children are, all of their art and all of their music is here. It's so joyful and represents the heart of our community. And they and their board are to be commended because we took their budget away. We did everything mean to them, and they just keep excelling and doing really well. Now, we didn't take all their budget away, but we did take some. But look at those smiles. How could you resist? And we're still here, and the community is blessed by both of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Well, I just have one thing to say. We do have openings on the Arts and Culture Commission, and if anyone listening would be interested in serving the town, now would be a really good time to step forward. Let us know. You can call the town at 759-3100 and give us your name, and we'd be glad to interview you for a position on the Arts and Culture Commission or on one of the other commissions that we have openings available on. So this would be a very good time to volunteer. Thank you.
And you get to work with some of the finest people in the world. Thank you so much, and keep up the good work. Council have any comments? Communications? Anyone?
Harvey?
Yeah.
I do.
Laura has?
out last night.
I have two items that I want to remark on. On Saturday, we had such a busy day over here at Civic Center. We had our Touch a Truck event, and I have a little 3-year-old great-grandson. They came up to spend the weekend with me. Let me tell you, he didn't want to get out of any truck. The only way we got him out was to point the next truck. So I want to compliment Parks and Recreation. Later that day, they also had the corn toss. And this is a busy campus with a lot of activities. Last night on our campus, we had the Take Back the Night event. For those of you who will not know what that's about, we have organizations coming together, law enforcement and many other community members, trying to prevent domestic violence. And what I want to say to you is don't be afraid if you're aware of someone that's a victim of domestic violence to approach them and offer them your hug, your care, and let them know that they can do something about it.
Thank you, Laura. Anyone else? Any other comments? There's no other comments, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the town council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of those items. Unless discussion is desired on a specific item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. This includes approving of the September 24th, 2015 council meeting minutes, approving the accounts payable, and awarding the purchase of a hot melt crack seal material for the fiscal year 2015-16 to Craveco Incorporated in the total purchase of $43,699.96. Anyone want to pull that item, or do you want to approve it as a whole?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
Motion to approve all items on the consent agenda.
Second, anyone? Okay, with a motion and a second, would you set the vote, Diane? And my voting gizmo doesn't work, so I'm going to have to do a voice vote.
How do you vote, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, we have a unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, we move on to number 9, old business for action, consideration of approving the second reading and passage of ordinance number 808, amending the town code chapter 8, business licenses. And with that, I would ask Diane, town clerk, to read ordinance number 808 by title only for the first reading. Sorry, for the second reading.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 808, an ordinance of the Mayor and Common Council of the Town of Prescott Valley, a municipal corporation of Arizona, amending Chapter 8 Business of the Town Code by renaming and amending Section 8-02-030, license required in Article 8-02 Business License to conform with changes in state law, providing that all other chapters, articles, and sections of the Town Code not herein repealed or amended shall remain in full force and effect, providing that if any provision in this ordinance is held invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, the remaining provisions shall not be affected, but shall continue in full force and effect, and providing that this ordinance shall be effective 30 days after its passage and approval according to law.
Thank you, Diane. With that, I'll ask, shall the ordinance pass? Would you set the vote, Diane?
Yes, Mayor?
And I'd vote yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank Council.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Now we'll move on to number 10, new business for review, comment, and/or possible action. Consideration of reading ordinance number 811, proposing a transaction privilege tax increase from 2.33% to 2.83% to restore the town services to pre-economic at recession level. And what this would do is, on $1,000, it would generate $5 of taxes. So, Larry, you have any comments?
Okay, Mr. Mayor and Council, this evening we will be having a presentation brought to you by our Public Works Director, Norm Davis, by James Edelstein from the Police Department, and Bill Copey, our Finance Manager, not actually that title, but nevertheless. What we are bringing to you this evening is the same presentation that we brought to you last Thursday that received very good coverage in the Prescott Valley Tribune, and we thank them for that. But let's take a step back. For the last 7 years, we've had 2 retreats, one in November, one in January. In those retreats, you, Mayor and Council, have identified 2 very critical services that you wanted to see not only maintained but upgraded, but we did not have the financial wherewithal to go ahead and do that. Your number 1 priority was maintenance of the streets and continuation of the growth of street capacity where it was appropriate, and majorly rebuilding some streets that were in disrepair. That was your number 1 priority for 7 years. Your second priority has been to make sure that this community is safe, that we continue to address crime, working very hard to lower the rate of crime in the town of Prescott Valley. Those have been your 2 highest priorities for the last 7 years. To that end, we have not been able to do the job that we would like to do in either category. As a result, you are seeing more costly maintenance of roads and actual road deterioration because we have not had the wherewithal, the financial wherewithal, to go ahead and take care of those needs. As you saw back in April and May, when every department head came to you in work study and presented a 5-year plan, and we're not talking a capital plan, we were talking operational plan. What did your department heads feel they were going to need over the next 5 years in terms of staff, in terms of equipment, in terms of operational dollars? You saw that very long list. It was certainly a shopping list, and it is long and expensive. Okay, but those were the departments other than your 2 highest priorities, streets and public safety. So with all of that in mind and acting at your direction to prioritize those 2 critical elements that we believe and we hear from the citizens in the town of Prescott Valley are the 2 most important things to address as this governmental entity, and that is streets, meaning transportation, and public safety. So with that, staff has prepared a plan where we would ask you to increase the sales tax. As you are well aware, we have 2 basic revenue streams that fund the town of Prescott Valley. Number 1 is town-generated sales tax. Number 2 is state-shared revenues. Those are our 2 revenue streams. We have our hands tied behind our backs compared to other communities. We do not have a renter's tax, and there are only 2 cities in the state of Arizona that don't have a renter's tax. We happen to be one of those. A renter's tax generates a great deal of money for every city in the state of Arizona except Prescott Valley and Lake Havasu. Okay, so we are at a disadvantage there in that we don't have that revenue stream for essential services. The other thing is we don't have a property tax. We're not suggesting either of those to you, by the way, but I do want to point out we do not have a property tax. And for those individuals that might be watching this, either from the audience or at home, you might be saying, wait a minute, I pay an annual property tax. True. So do I. I'm a taxpayer and a homeowner in Prescott Valley. but I don't pay it to the benefit of the town of Prescott Valley. I pay a property tax. It goes to the state of Arizona, it goes to Yavapai County, goes to a school district, goes to a fire district, and Yavapai College. But there is not a line in that property tax that sends any of those dollars, critical dollars, to fund the operations of the town of Prescott Valley. Okay, very important to understand. So we only have two ways to raise revenue for the operations of this community. One is sales tax, the other is state shared revenues, and that is only increased based on population. So with that in mind, the plan that we present you is to take our sales tax, which right now our rate is 2.33, okay, last raised in 2002 by a vote of the mayor and town council of that time. And what was it dedicated to? Transportation. The number one priority that you continue to identify and continue to want to fund. And that was in 2002. We are suggesting that if we raised our sales tax by half a cent to 2.83, that would generate $3 million, 2/3 of which would go to the Public Works Department for the maintenance of streets, the rebuilding of streets, and the construction of new streets. And Norm will go into that in more detail. And very close to the other 1/3, about $750,000, would go to the police department. Their presentation will suggest what they really believe we need to have in this community to keep crime at bay. And that is also your very high priority. There is a small amount of money that would be looked at on an annual basis in our retreat, where you set policy and you direct staff on what you want to accomplish in that given year. You may very well say, take that remaining $200,000 and put it all into streets. You may say that there's a department that has special needs that particular fiscal year. That programming would end up being on your shoulders on an annual basis at our 2 retreats. So with that, I think it's very important to make one very important point. In 2007, the town of Prescott Valley's budget was $111 million. Let me say that again, $111 million prior to the recession. Today, the town of Prescott Valley's budget is $72 million. Have you seen a diminishment in service levels in this town? Not appreciably. But you're not looking very closely at the hidden costs of deferred maintenance of the millions of dollars in infrastructure that we have in this town, and those days have to go away. Once again, $111 million in 2007, today $72 million. And so we have a large gap in terms of being able to fund the services that you all have been accustomed to, and the infrastructure that needs to be fixed. So with that, I'd ask Norm Davis to come up and talk about the streets.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to present to you tonight about the Public Works Department and the pavement maintenance. I've prepared several slides here. I did go over this last week in work study, and for the benefit of the audience at home and in the audience here tonight, I'd like to go through that same presentation. You see it's dated the same date. So this is the presentation I gave last week, so I would like to go through it again and explain some of what Manager Tarkowski talked about, some of the deferred maintenance and loss of revenue we've had, and some of the capital that we'd like to put back into maintenance. So this particular presentation, if anyone would like a hard copy, I'd have brought 5 extra copies if someone in the audience would like to have one as we follow through in the slides, but I'll be available after the fact. I'd like to look at it in more detail. To get started, I always like to show this slide about what we do to fund road improvements and our maintenance. So here's the major funding sources. I always like that term buckets of money because it's not one big pot. There are separate revenue funds, and they are dedicated for one use, and these are the ones that are dedicated towards streets. The first one is the HERF funding. That's what you pay at the pump, the gas tax. So that's very important for maintenance. I'll go into this one in more detail throughout my presentation, but that one is the one that we have money for maintenance. The next bucket you see is a 1-3% Manager Tarkowski talked about in 2002. This was the sales tax increase that went to fund major roadway expansion, and those particular forward roadways we've been moving forward every year. It generates about $2 million a year. That's Robert Road, Lakeshore, Navajo, and Viewpoint. Each one of those roads is seeing a certain level of expansion, and that particular funding goes there. But keep in mind, that's only for those particular 4 roadways. So the nice thing about this funding source, it only goes to those roads, but it adds capacity, better pavement structure, but it is a funding source for roadway construction. The next one is Development Impact Fees, or the acronym DIF. That is the impact fee that's paid from new housing, as you can see. So keep in mind, growth pays for growth has always been a long-standing council directive to the development community. They build infrastructure adjacent to their subdivision, but keep in mind you always have the development impact fees when you at the time you get a building permit. You pay into that because that helps some of the regional circulation. Obviously, more people, we have to add more lanes and the like, and improve other roadways. So the regional approach is what we use this particular funding source, but that's only to go for new roadway capacity. There was a study that I know the town went through a year ago. It's published, and that particular development impact fee report has to go for certain roads for circulation, so cannot be used for maintenance. Flood control dollars, I always like putting it up there, is that's the levy, as we've talked about, on property tax, and sometimes we're able to put storm drain improvements, and we improve roads as part of that, but that's really for stormwater management, and a lot of our stormwater management takes place in the rights-of-way, but that particular funding source, we do some pavement maintenance, but once again, our pavement replacement, but not really for maintenance. The last one, that magical bucket of the federal government or state funding, there is a funding source at times, but I'll go into a little more detail that particular funding source isn't really reliable, and it's very few and far between, if not a lot of years in between. Let's focus a little bit on this Fed ADOT one. I think most important, people may recall back in 2009 when we, of course, had the recession start in 2007, there was the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. There was a lot of money put towards construction jobs to put an infusion into jobs and also projects. Good point. This was particular Glasser Hill Road got awarded. What I'd like to point out is this particular project, although federal funded, only went to Glasser Hill Road. As you see, I got this picture of this project sign. That was back in 2009. As you can see on the sign up there, it doesn't have a Prescott Valley logo. This was regional money that came to the full region, $1.5 million. It was all spent in Prescott Valley because we had a project that was viable, but keep in mind it was regional money, but it got spent all on Glasser Hill Road. Very worthy project for a regional road, but keep in mind that was a one-time shot in the arm. That was back in 2009. A lot of the public may recall Visible Project here a couple weeks ago. We actually did a rejuvenating seal to keep that pavement viable. It's our most heavily traveled road. Had a lot of public visibility because we did re-oil the road, which is part of maintenance. What I want you to focus on, that a lot of my presentation on, is this 5-year cycle. This was 6 years ago. It was time to do a pavement maintenance on Glasser Hill Road, so that's why you see that rejuvenating oil put on the particular roadway. Another project that probably people are aware of that's been real recent is the Enterprise Parkway improvements. This was a state grant. Where did this money come from? Well, it was an economic development grant from the Arizona Commerce Authority through the state. The town put in a competitive application, got selected, but $500,000 of that grant, the town actually helped supplement that project cost of $1.5 million total cost for connectivity of the road. Viewing audience is probably where we put in new signal and road connectivity. But important thing, this was a one-time shot in the arm for economic development. It built a roadway, but once again, it built a roadway, but no maintenance dollars. So we continue to build lane miles of road, but we need maintenance dollars to maintain what we have, because every time you expand the system, obviously you need more maintenance dollars to maintain extra lane miles. We talked about the bucket of money at the 5 funding sources. This is the biggest one for maintenance. As I talked about, really the only funding source we have for maintenance is when you pay at the pump or HERF dollars, Highway User Revenue Fund. What's important to note, you pay at the pump, and that particular 18 cents a gallon was back in 1993. It hasn't been changed since then. And the second, with today's dollars, I'd like to point out, if that was indexed only to inflation, it would be at 41 cents. Economists have run the numbers, the cost of doing business. So basically in almost 23 years, that particular price hasn't been indexed whatsoever. It's the same amount of money we got in 93. We have more lane miles here, and that has been very difficult to not even keep up with inflation. Once again, you're only buying about half of what you could back in 93 in roadway maintenance dollars. Very difficult. Talk about on a state funding level. What do we get here in Arizona? This is from the American Petroleum Institute. You can get this on the web. It details every state about where they get revenue to maintain roads. I'll go into a little bit about more federal funding, but as you can see here for Arizona, as you see some of the detail, that 18 cents state tax, and then you see the one total state sales tax and fees, and then, of course, the 18 cents that the federal government has that's part of the pump for a total amount of $37.40. That's what we get to maintain roads. And keep in mind, our federal government takes a portion of theirs to maintain the federal highways. So what's important is some of that state revenues we talked about is what goes to maintain roads, and it trickles down. The legislature gets that. Let's talk about what the legislature does with it. They have needs at the state level. We're well aware of all the needs of all the essential services we have, whether it be schools, law enforcement, all those particular departments. Important thing to point out, of the money that hasn't been benchmarked since 1993, the state legislature continues to raid some of that funding that was for roadway maintenance to fund some other divisions. The biggest one is the Department of Public Safety. They fund their law enforcement from that particular fund. This current year, $140 million diverted that should go to roadway maintenance that goes to run the DPS department. Some of the other challenges we have since 93 is greater fuel efficiency. People aren't buying as much gas. Same cars, same amount of lane miles to a certain degree, but when cars start getting 30 to 40 miles per gallon, they don't pay as much tax. They still wear out the road as much. Fuel efficiency, although that does help the environment, very difficult for the tax. Hasn't really been benchmarked. Electric cars, we all know it. They haven't figured out yet how to charge electric cars. There's been legislation they should pay more in the vehicle license tax, but electric cars, they don't pay anything at the gas pump. They use the roads. They wear and tear on the roads. Electric cars do also desire to have good, smooth roads, but they don't pay any tax. Haven't figured that out yet. And, of course, one thing I want to point out in this slide is you can see the national average for what states collect to maintain roads is 49 cents. The state of Arizona, I'll have another slide, but we collect 37 cents. That's 11 cents below the national average. Significant about what Arizona does for funding. Let's talk a little bit about federal funding. The federal transportation bill is typically a 6-year bill, and the feds have never really wanted to tackle the same dilemma across the nation about where do we get more money to maintain our roads. The federal gas tax hasn't been benchmarked in the same amount of time. Their federal funding bill is typically a 6-year bill. Since 2009, they haven't worked through at the federal level, at the national level, in order to fund the particular highway needs throughout America. One thing that's important to note, they typically, in the past years, they have a $55 billion national improvement. They collect, or they spend about $45 billion, but they only collect $35 billion. Once again, where does that money come from when they only collect $35 billion in gas tax at the federal level, but spend $45? That's the general fund of the feds, or they're printing money, or they're borrowing money. So the federal government can't even maintain within their means. More money is needed, but they still don't have enough from the existing gas funding source in order to feed that need of what they're spending every year. Every year they go in significantly in a hole for what they spend and don't collect it at the pump. A little bit about the tax bill. As I mentioned, it's a 6-year bill. Since 2009, they've had 35 continuing resolutions. They've wanted to deal with it, but obviously both the House and the Senate have to agree. So they've had other priorities. They'll do small extensions for a month. It has an eclipsing date. They kick the can down the road a little further. Currently, where is it at? It expires here at the end of the month, October 29th. If their particular model stays in place, they'll have to do a 36 continuing resolution. Once again, since 2009, Congress has not wanted to deal with increased maintenance funding. They continue to kick the can down the road and said, well, let's just do what we did last year. Haven't really ever tried to address it since 2009. Continuing resolutions. I want to get back to Prescott Valley road maintenance. As I mentioned, what's the state of maintenance here in Prescott Valley? I think council is well aware of when I come to you and we spend our available budget dollars every year on maintenance. You saw in the consent agenda we've got crack seal maintenance. Well, this is a snapshot of the maintenance cycle we have in Prescott Valley. All the different colors there represent a particular year of the last time we performed a chip seal maintenance. As you can see, if you look in the legend down below, it's on a 10-year cycle. What I'm going to, as I mentioned before, keep the 5-year cycle in mind. I'll have some more slides. But what we have right now in Prescott Valley is basically a 10-year cycle. Each particular different color there represents the year of which the last maintenance cycle was performed. Why does this make good sense? What we do as pavement managers is, and operators here in Prescott Valley, the maintenance money we have, we maintain the roads that have been done last. Obviously, that makes good sense. So you spending all the money we have every year, but we're on a 10-year pavement cycle is what we have here in Prescott Valley. So each color up there represents all the roadways in Prescott Valley. And this is how we keep track of it. Yep. Let's talk about revenues over the last few years. Manager Trotowski talked about the recession we've been in. We tightened our belt. We did what we had to, but deferred maintenance. We haven't been putting money back into the system. I want you to point out, keep in mind on that gold bar where I've got 1.5 million. That'll be important when I lead up to in the next few slides. But look at where we've had for expenditure of maintenance dollars in Prescott Valley over the last 10 years. It's important to note 06, 07, you can see we're up around $1 million then. I'll look back and say we were probably up to date on a 5-year maintenance cycle back then. But that was the start of the big, or towards the end of the big housing boom. Lots of new pavements came on to Prescott Valley. We were basically on a good program. As you can get 07, 08, we all remember October 07 is when things really tanked here for the economy. We had to cut 20% from our operating budgets. The reason you see a good expenditure there, we always do our chip seals early in the year like July or August. Well, things were going great. We did our chip seals, spent all our money for that year, and all of a sudden the bottom falls out in October. So little misnomer there. We did have a good year of spending, but October of 07 is when things really tanked. As you can see, the next 5 years during the recession up till 12, 13, that's the amount of revenue that we were gaining in order to maintain roads. The two different colors talk about some of the procedures that we do to maintain pavements. Council may be aware the blue is a chip seal that we perform on a routine basis, re-oil and re-aggregate the surface of the road. And of course, an overlay is when you actually put asphalt in 2 or 3 inch layers to add more pavement structure. That's a good pavement management strategy too. As you can see, the red and the blue detail what we spent over the years. And you can see here recently, in the last 3 years, we haven't spent any money on overlay. Been spending all on chip seal, trying to get caught up. So here's a representation over the years. What I do want to show is in today's dollars, the Public Works Department, if we're going to have a 5-year cycle, is we need $1.5 million in order to maintain a 5-year pavement cycle of chip seal maintenance, which is recommended. So keep that in the back of your head while I go through the next few slides. But you can see we have never in the last 10 years or even the last 5 years come close to what is the minimum in order to maintain our payments on a good maintenance cycle. So we've always fallen short. We had to tighten our belt during the tough times. So quite simply, what happens if the town does not perform a regular chip seal cycle maintenance on a 5-year cycle? This next slide I'm going to show, this is out of the Federal Highways Life Cycle Cost Analysis. This is a technical bulletin that all of us pavement managers and engineers work from. This is the Federal Highways Circular. These are the true experts that study pavement across the nation, all kinds of different municipalities, different types of large, small cities like. These are the pavement experts. These are the guys that dedicate their life to asphaltic pavements. What do they tell us in this technical bulletin? This is an excerpt that really kind of sums up best. If you look at the top line there that's delineated as alternative A, the solid line, that's a pavement. And really in the asphalt pavement world, when it's brand new, you can see that line there and how it starts to taper off. It's good for about the first 5 years without any maintenance treatment, but it really starts to fall off. If you look at this graph from all of the studying they've done and proven in the field, it really starts to fall off at year 10. And at year 15, basically, you've lost your pavement value if you've done nothing to maintain it. And then what you're looking at is a full pavement replacement. I think everyone in the audience have seen, it's called a mill and fill. You actually grind up the existing pavement and relay new. If you don't do anything for 15 years, you've lost the value. You've got to grind it up and actually replace it. What the best recommendation is, you see the dotted line there, which is alternative B. As you can see, what that delineates is if you do a chip seal maintenance every 5 years, what it does is rejuvenate that pavement, and you're actually to the same point in 15 years by every 3 years performing your routine maintenance. And a chip seal costs about $1.75 a square yard. That's for every 5 years. But after a life cycle, you'd spend about $5.25 at the 15-year mark if you maintain your pavement adequately, or you could be looking at $17. It's only about a third of the cost if you do your routine chip maintenance. This is what the technical bulletins tell us, and this is what pavement managers use as the guideline. I like to always draw an analogy. This would be very similar to maintaining the oil in your car. They recommend 3,000 to 5,000 miles, maybe 6,000. But what happens? Can you drive that car 10,000 miles? Absolutely. But what you're going to do is, once again, it really starts to make wear and tear on your engine, and then you're looking at full engine replacement if you don't do your routine oil changes. So it's very similar. If you do the routine maintenance, it's a nominal cost, but you end up at that same life cycle to maintain that true value of that pavement structure or your car value with, we use this change in your oil type of analogy. As I mentioned a little bit in the last slide, what is the difference in the cost? We have 241 centerline miles of roadways in Prescott Valley. And as we mentioned here, in the 15-year cycle, if you've got a new pavement either put in through subdivision or new pavement use, that if you don't do any pavement maintenance, you're looking at a value that you would lose of about $58 million if you had to replace those pavements if you did nothing. If you do a chip seal maintenance, $22 million. Obviously, you can see, once again, about a third of the cost to do your routine maintenance and fund it adequately. And that $22 million is the funding that we would need here in Prescott Valley to maintain that adequate level, to maintain that value of the pavement, as we saw in the graph, to where it doesn't really taper off and you lose the value of your capital investment. So important thing to do, to note. If you do your chip seals and do your minimums, you really save that value over the long haul. Let's talk about Prescott Valley. Let's talk about the state level. As I showed some of the other particular slides, this slide is what's Arizona doing at the state level for enhanced transportation funding. We talked about the state collects the funding, the feds collect some funding, they maintain their roads. This next slide was a presentation that I saw that was from the Arizona Commerce and Industry, from the Arizona Chamber of Commerce. Important thing about this presentation is the Arizona Chamber of Commerce recognizes the transportation corridors here in Arizona, how important it is a link between the big markets in California and the big markets in Texas. And the reason for this presentation was to show the need that we need to maintain our roadways for the commerce through the state and hopefully take advantage of some of that commerce as drawn off some of that use. Can some of that commerce drop off in some of our markets here in Arizona? Absolutely. But significant transportation corridor on I-40 and I-10 through the state, we need to maintain the integrity of that for the good economic growth and job growth here in Prescott Valley. This is one of the slides that I thought was interesting from the presentation I pulled out. You can see here that they were talking about who is actually at the state level enhancing the particular funding for transportation and pavement maintenance. Interesting thing was from this Arizona Department of Commerce show, you can see Arizona listed there as doing nothing. You can see some of the other states doing significant amounts in order to enhance transportation funding in order for maintenance. It's a national issue that most states are all taking action because they realize pavements are deteriorating, we've been through recession, and it's time to start bringing back that deferred maintenance that has been suffering and get our transportation system back up to acceptable service levels. Associated Press does a study. As you can see, in 2015, 1/3 of all states have approved measures to raise funds for transportation. And the second bullet point they have here, Associated Press reports that 1/2 of all states have passed transportation funding measures since 2013. Came out of the recession in 12-13, economists tell us, other states are taking action at the state level to enhance funding to make sure there's better funding for for the roadway transportation system in states. What has Arizona done? Nothing at the legislative level. This is once again from the Arizona Petroleum Institute. Shows across the nation what other states have done. As you can see, the top line there is the U.S. average, state average of what the particular tax is at a state level. As you can see, Arizona ranks number 43 down there at the 37 cents. The average is 48 cents. As I pointed out before, Arizona is a full 11 cents below the average for what other states collect to maintain and disperse out through all the cities and towns for roadway maintenance. This next slide's a good indication of where the particular revenue is that states use to maintain roads. The different delineations you can see there, the states that have some of the greater revenue and taxes for roadways are listed in the red. So those particular states have more than 49 cents. And if you look at some of the detail, the states that 40 to 49 are listed in blue. And of course, you can see the states there that are listed less than 40 cents. And with Arizona being in number 43rd position. You can see we're yellow. We share that particular designation with a lot of the states you see in the belt across the bottom. The interesting thing about this slide was some of the states you see there that have actually increased their revenue, Texas being one of them. I read a recent report that Texas, although not sales tax, at their particular state level, they've earmarked any additional funding they receive in revenue. It's earmarked from state sales taxes, earmarked for roadway maintenance. So they actually set a particular ceiling of $28 billion, if I'm not mistaken. Anything more than that they collect from year goes all to pavement maintenance. So that way they maintain basic services. But that's how Texas has dealt with it. In addition, some of those other states have worked hard in order to increase their revenue. So in Arizona's case, as you saw, they're doing nothing. I think Arizona will share with Oklahoma, New Mexico, Alabama, and Mississippi as states that have done nothing, while other states have all increased. We talked about we have a 10-year payment cycle. It's recommended that we have a 5-year payment cycle by the experts in order to maintain that value. What can the town of Prescott Valley do to catch up on pavement maintenance? What town staff has prepared here is what would it take to get back to that 5-year cycle of doing chip seals that we talked about, the basically $175 a square yard. This particular graph does show, we talked about the $1.5 million. That's what it would take once we get caught up. What this slide details is at $2 million a year, it would take 4 years in order to eliminate our 10-year backlog and get back to a 5-year payment cycle for chip seal. So as you can see, in year 4, we would be basically caught up. But we want to point out that $1.5 million is the minimum we need to maintain that 5-year payment cycle and maintain that cycle so we don't have any deferred maintenance. I know, Mayor, you brought up last week in work study that, well, geez, is this just chip seal? And that's correct. This doesn't provide any funding for, in the core of the town, for any patching. Once again, this particular guide doesn't show any particular enhanced maintenance that way. We do every year have about $400,000 in the streets maintenance budget to do routine maintenance. But what that does is take care of the critical priorities. But as we've talked about, we like to do some edge patching. And I think council can see out in the particular on some of the roads, our major arterials, we're able to do some of that. But unless you get on major arterial, the road edges continue to break off and we can't replace them. So our roads continue to get narrow and narrow. In addition, every once in a while, we get a pothole that we've got to cut out and replace. The nice thing is that revenue continues to decrease. We'd like to point out, too, this is just chip seal, but we could also enhance some of our maintenance activities and service levels with some enhanced asphalt replacement and the like. And the other point, too, as I talked about, we haven't done many overlays to increase that structural integrity. It would be nice to bring back some overlays. So what I'm presenting to council is I'd like to get back to funding the particular as a staff member, a 5-year maintenance cycle. But obviously, we could make some determinations within those boundaries with council's direction in order to do some better maintenance on service levels, but also a predominant amount go to chip seals. So that's the proposal here. Any variation of that particular is up for council response. But that's staff's recommendation at this level. So our multi-year plan, we talked about $2 million a year would get us caught up in 4 years. What I did want to show was we've run the numbers, all technical staff run a lot of spreadsheets. This particular exhibit here just shows the particular colored map, and you can see in the legend there with a total estimate of $2 million infusion into the chip seal maintenance. We would start catching up about every we would take another 2 years off. So take year 1 with a $2 million chip seal maintenance program, we could get down to an 8-year cycle. And each one of these, I'll go through them quick, $2 million each year, takes another 2 years off. And of course, when we get to year 4, which is this particular map, you show we're back to where we need to be. And actually at year 5, this was this year's program, may look a little familiar. This is the streets we did this year. So in year 5, we would be back to a 5-year maintenance cycle, and we would be back to where we need to be. And so that would be our plan as presented to council, that we've run the numbers. I'm very confident with that particular funding source in order to maintain maintenance. This slide just shows a synopsis of each one of those particular funding years. If you look in the legend, it talks about $2 million a year. As you can see in the bottom line, once we get caught up, $1.5 million a year would be the minimum in order to maintain our investment in payments. And it does also take care of all the new payments brought in line that are here to date in order to maintain those new payments built by subdivisions. So here is the plan. In conclusion, If you want to maintain acceptable pavement service levels for transportation of people and services, you need to have an adequate funding to perform chip seal maintenance on a 5-year interval if we're going to maintain that capital investment we have in our transportation system. With that, Council, that's the same presentation I gave last week. Thank you for your attention of me hitting the highlights again. But I'd be happy to answer any further questions you may have about what I presented tonight.
Questions, anyone? Laura?
Just to be clear for myself, even though I've heard it twice, you just said that it would take us 4 years just to get on target with only chip seal. That doesn't take care of potholes. That doesn't take care of a lot of other things. Thanks.
Councilwoman, if I could clarify a little bit, we do have existing pothole money, but what it would do would maintain our existing service levels. If you want that particularly enhanced, some of our roads get pretty rough with some of the patching we have to do. So to answer your question directly, yes, we have money to patch potholes. I don't want to set that hysteria, but we don't enhance that particular level of service.
A lot more deterioration is going to happen in those 4 years.
Marty?
No.
Mary?
Yes. Thank you, Norm. It was a great presentation, and I do appreciate it. You know, when I have, over the last 5 years, received emails and different things, complaints from the citizens of the town about roads that were bad and everything, you know, I reached out to Norm, and, you know, he did the best that he could with the funding that is available. Over the past 5 years, I've had the opportunity to sit on a SIMPO board, which is a regional cooperation here in the Yavapai County area. And you know, I've gone to the state and I've talked to them and I've tried to reach out for our shared revenue, but you know what? They don't share well. That's just really the bottom line. They have things to pay, and they do what they need to do. And we don't get our shared revenue, and it's not right, but that's reality. And I've gone there, and I've heard it myself. I have been face-to-face with many representatives of different areas, and that was what they told me. They said, we're giving you $25 million. You ought to be thankful for that. And I walked away, really. So this is not us against you, but this is us knowing that we have maintenance problems in our town and roads that need to be taken care of. And I don't want what we have to go down the drain. I want to maintain it. And nothing's free, and it costs money. And I just want you to know this has not been an overnight thing. We've looked at it, we've worked on it, we have budgeted for 5 years. I've been in budgets for 5 years trying to figure out how to move money around, how to get this paid, how to get this done. It's not there. It's just not there. So we have a responsibility. Someone left this town for us. We were not here in the beginning. A lot of us were not here in the beginning. Just like this country, we weren't here in the beginning. But somebody left it for us, and they left it for us to take care of it so that we can give it to our children. That's our job. And we're a team. We're united. So I just really want you to understand, this is not something that has been thought over with no thought at all. It's been thought over for a very long time and for many years. And it's a hard thing to look at. But the roads need repair, and I know all of you have been on those roads, and I know all of you know what I'm saying is true. And I thank you, Norm, for everything that you do and what you've done with what we've been able to do with the shared revenue that we do get and will continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any other?
Mayor, if I could, I wanted to just go back on a slide with just emphasize something that Councilwoman Mallory brought up. Back at this slide from the American Petroleum Institute, it talks about what states are doing at a level. If you look at some of the detail, which may be hard to see at this scale, but you can see on the right you get the light gray. The reason that line bar looks the same for every state, because obviously that's the federal 18 cents. So we talked about the feds haven't done anything to increase gas tax at the national level at the pump. So every state has that. So every state is faced with the same revenue challenge. As you can see, the dark gray to the left there is actually what states have done. As you can see, they've done it at a local level or at a state level in order to enhance funding. So Arizona has chosen not to do anything. So actually, if you look towards the top in some of those other states where you get that middle different color, they've actually come up, as I pointed out, with other funding sources at the legislative level in order to enhance that funding. They've actually looked at bulk fuel tax, different from the pump. So when you look at some of that sales tax, that can be paid at the pump, but other states, as you see, they're borrowing so significant amount of money. They actually have come up with other innovative type ways they've never done in the past in order to increase funding for roadway maintenance. Because, as I said, the feds haven't done anything. At the legislative level, they've done some effort. But as you can see, some states have some innovative things. Texas being the biggest one, I think, with, as they say, any additional revenue we get to maintain basic services in a flush year with lots of tax generation, sales tax generation, they're putting it all to maintenance, nothing else. That's their top priority in Texas and a lot of states is transportation. It's a national trend in order to increase maintenance, not just here in Arizona or Prescott Valley. My counterparts in every city, town, or are maintaining regional roads, they all have these particular funding challenges.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Norm.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been a pleasure presenting to you.
Who's next? Larry, Jay, or Chief? Welcome, Chief.
I'm going to do my best to use the clicker and present at the same time. Last week, as you'll remember, when I presented this the first time, I had an assistant because it's hard enough to chew gum and walk, much less do this presentation and move through the PowerPoint at the same time. So forgive me if I stumble a bit, but I do appreciate the opportunity to once again provide this presentation and I think this very important information to you as our mayor and council, but also to our community. As the town continues to grow at almost exponential rates, it's important to ensure that town services grow as well, so that we're best positioned to meet the needs of our residents and our businesses. In June, Chief Gerald presented the police department's 5-year projections, which detailed where we need to be by the year 2020. The items that will be discussed today are included in that plan. However, with the budgetary increase that is being considered, we will be able to implement parts of that 5-year plan much sooner and thereby significantly improve the service we provide to this community. The relative safety, by the way, of this community has led several organizations to rate Prescott Valley as one of the best places to live in Arizona. In order to maintain the desirability of this community as a place to live, work, and play, we have 2 main goals which require the support of our community and town government to attain. To improve public safety, or said another way, the safety of the public, and to enhance transparency and accountability. I'd like to start by providing an historical perspective on what occurred during the period that began just before the Great Recession in 2007 up until today. Despite the recent addition of more than 11 positions, our overall budget today is almost 21% lower than in 2007. In 2007, it was $12,015,945. Today, it's $9,748,918. During this time period, we saw a 9% reduction in workforce through attrition. In 2007, we had a total of 86 employees, compared to 78 in 2014. During that time, our population increased by almost 22%. In 2007, it was 35,740, and today it's 44,500. Due to increases in population, the amount of police activity and the severity of the crimes we are experiencing has been increasing. Recently, we have seen a 30% increase in Part 1 crime. And although we've seen an overall decrease in Part 2 crime of about 11%, assaults and domestic violence are up 26%. Arrests are also up, as well as our overall activity levels. For arrests, we are currently on pace to increase about 8% over last year. Over the last 5 years, we have seen our response times to calls for service go up by more than 30 seconds. In other words, it takes us about 10% longer to get to a priority 1 call. That would be a crime that is in progress. It's interesting to note that during that same time period, we have installed a lot of technology into our patrol vehicles, and that technology includes the mobile data terminals and a GPS system. So whereas going back to 2007, it might have required the officer to write down the address on a notepad, grab a paper map, figure out where they are, where they're going, and then chart that path themselves. Now they have a computer that essentially does that for them. This has resulted in a necessity to shift our attention away from some of the proactive efforts we made in the past. The greatest reduction in services has been our community outreach efforts and traffic safety, as you will see next. In 2007, we ran 2 Citizens Academies. Today, none. And in fact, we haven't run any since 2010. In 2007, the DARE program was active in 5 of our elementary schools. Yet today, we have no DARE program. In 2007, we had 3 school resource officers. Today, we have 1. Other prevention efforts like Cops and Bobbers, where children and police officers spend the morning together fishing at Fane Park, have been reduced from 1 event a year to none. Bicycle rodeos, where trained officers teach kids how to ride bicycles and about bicycle safety, and in partnership with local businesses we provide safety equipment, have been reduced or eliminated. In 2007, we held 5, and in 2014, we did 1. Even more concerning, in 2007, we had 184 individual block watches. Today, that number has dwindled to only 15. These reductions were the unfortunate byproduct of a reduction in resources and a need for the police department to refocus its efforts on the basic mission of responding to calls for service, following up on those calls for service, and responding to traffic accidents. The key word here is responding. Our proactive efforts have been significantly reduced. Speaking of the traffic section, in 2007, it was staffed by 4 officers. Today, we don't have anyone specifically assigned to traffic. Over the same period, the number of drug recognition experts dropped from 18 to 9. Drug recognition experts and phlebotomists are trained specifically to identify the symptoms of drug impairment, and phlebotomists are trained to draw blood so that we don't have to take those individuals whom we're investigating for impaired driving to the hospital to draw blood. Since 2007, we've seen an 83% increase in accidents. There were 337 in 2007 compared to 615 in 2014. What is interesting is that in 2007, we issued 6,919 citations, traffic warnings, and repair orders, whereas in 2014, we issued 9,617, essentially a 39% increase in the number of traffic contacts. And despite that increase in contacts, kudos due to our patrol officers for making those efforts through the recession, the number of accidents has still risen. The reasons for this rise in the number of collisions could be due to several factors, including the elimination of photo enforcement, an increase in the number of cars on the road, an increase in population, and a lack of available staff or dedicated assignment to the traffic section. One thing to note is that for the period of January through September of 2015 as compared to that same time period in 2014, there has been a 30% increase in injury collisions. As far as traffic enforcement goes, impaired driver enforcement has suffered as well. In 2007, our officers investigated and arrested 308 impaired drivers. In 2014, it dropped to 183. This reduction indicates our personnel have less time to proactively pursue impaired drivers. National studies indicate that alcohol-impaired driving is on the decline. Unfortunately, drug-impaired driving is on the increase. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, the unfortunate reality there is that we have less officers who are trained to specifically recognize and detect those cues of drug-impaired driving. We have experienced some technology challenge through this period as well. Our fleet of patrol vehicles is outfitted with computers that have reached or exceeded their life expectancy and are still operating on outdated 3G data. Our evidence section processes thousands of digital images every year. This current budget year, we've subscribed to evidence.com to help deal with the high volume. Our record section utilizes software to manage data, and that software currently does not allow us to efficiently and timely retrieve the data we need to deploy our resources. We're getting the data, but it's very time intensive for our staff, and sometimes by the time we get it, it's not useful in the field for deployment purposes. Currently, we're tracking data related to use of force, pursuits, injuries, and complaints manually. These are just a few indicators that best practices indicate we should be using to predict bad behavior and prevent issues with our personnel. Despite these challenges, our personnel have aggressively pursued grant funding to improve certain services and make an effort to maintain other services during the recession. Since 2007, we have obtained $4,047,340 in grants. Some of the items paid for with this grant money were our Family Violence Unit and funds from the Governor's Office of Highway Safety to pay for our personnel to proactively issue citations and enforce seatbelt violations, impaired driver violations, and other traffic violations, as well as obtain necessary equipment such as radar units for our patrol vehicles. Some other sources of grant awards here are listed here to include the Department of Justice, Arizona Community Foundation, and the Department of Homeland Security. We have received over $110,000 in donations from the Prescott Valley Police Foundation for officer safety equipment during that period. We're very grateful for that. And we have increased our training budget by 270% since 2012 to ensure our staff, both civilian and sworn, are properly prepared to carry out their responsibilities. Although we have had success during these challenging times, given additional funding, we are committed to the return of many services that will significantly improve the safety and increase transparency and accountability within the department and our community. First, we will properly staff our traffic section. We currently have no one solely dedicated to our traffic section, and even though there has been a concerted effort that we spoke of earlier by our patrol officers to enforce the traffic laws, the fact is that many times they are simply too busy responding to calls for service. Our goal would be to assign and restaff the traffic section by April or May of 2017. These officers will perform traffic enforcement, crash investigation, impaired driver enforcement, and community education related to traffic safety, thus relieving our patrol officers from those tasks and allowing them more time to proactively patrol our streets and neighborhoods. Our agency will be better equipped and staffed to improve our crime prevention efforts in the community. Our Support Services Division will coordinate a robust Citizens Academy where our residents can learn about the police department and participate in hands-on activities designed to educate our community about the realities of policing. Our patrol squads will engage with our block watches in their districts. Our community services officers will coordinate our presence at community events, and events like Cops and Bobbers will bring our community and our officers together for a stronger relationship. A recent example of this relationship illustrates the importance of this kind of activity. Detective Sergeant Rob Brown and Detective Danny Owen went to a Shriners Club meeting recently to provide information about how to prevent and discover if you are the victim of identity theft. Within a couple days of the presentation, 2 members of the club had called Sergeant Brown and let him know that with the information provided, they were able to discover that they'd been victims of identity theft and then take measures to prevent further attacks of that nature. With the increased budget, we would implement several new services. We will purchase computer software and hardware and provide training to certify our investigators so they are able to examine and preserve evidence on items like cell phones and computers. Currently, the backlog of evidence at the state level sometimes requires victims to wait a year or more to get that evidence back so that we can charge the suspects appropriately. With this digital forensics program, we'll be able to retrieve that kind of data within a couple of days and provide much better service to our victims here in Prescott Valley. We will purchase software for use by our professional standards section that will allow us to better track those incidents that can be a predictor of potential problems with an employee, with the hopes that we will have an early intervention and save an employee's career. We will implement on-body cameras for all officers who work the street, providing a level of transparency that our community expects. A quick side note here. I'm starting to hear, especially when it comes to complaints from citizens in our community or misunderstandings about enforcement action that we might have taken, that probably 1 out of 2 times the complainant asks me or whoever happens to be investigating the complaint whether there is video evidence. So there is definitely an expectation growing within our community here in Prescott Valley that we provide that service of transparency. We will begin addressing community problems with a dedicated squad of officers who will direct their efforts toward the suppression, prevention, and apprehension of criminals. These officers will be deployed in cars, on bicycles, or on foot as the mission dictates. And finally, in our efforts to remain compliant with state record retention laws, we will work through a backlog of criminal cases to ensure that we properly examine, retain, and or dispose of that information. So in summary, the proposed budgetary increase will allow us to accelerate our 5-year plan significantly. We'll dedicate officers to our traffic section to be able to give attention to any problem areas in the town, investigate accidents, address traffic complaints, conduct alcohol enforcement patrols, and free up our patrol officers. We will assign another detective to the criminal investigation section to cut down on the time that it takes to bring a case to prosecution. We'll implement a problem-solving unit that will be dedicated to work on problem areas within the town. We will purchase body-worn cameras for transparency. We'll become more up-to-date regarding technology in general. We will reestablish the very important community outreach programs, such as our Block Watch and neighborhood association groups, and we will implement a new business liaison program. And in the end, this translates into increased service to our customers, our community, and a more trusting and transparent relationship with them. We will vastly improve traffic safety. We will return to a greater commitment and ability to conduct proactive efforts within the community, and we will improve our response time to those priority incidents and try to reduce that 30-second increase that we've seen over the last year. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Comments? Mary?
Well, again, thank you very much. I'm sorry I missed this last week, but again, it's the same situation that, you know, the very thing that takes care of our community needs more help, and we need to step up to the plate on this. We need to be able to support our officers so that they can better serve when the calls come in. We have more people. There are more calls. This is for all of us. It's for the elderly, the young families, all of us. We call for help, and these first responders show up. And I know they do. And you know they do. And we need to support that. Thank you, James.
Any other comments? What it is about 30,000 calls a year. That isn't all. There's 15,000 follow-ups or more. Chief, any other comments?
No, thank you very much.
Good job. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. As you heard from James and Norm talk about how the extra half a cent is going to be spent, I'm going to focus on the town's current TPT rate, what our collections are, and then how we compare to other cities in Arizona. So that's where my focus is going to be. As I stated last Thursday, I'm going to try to make this very brief since most of you have heard this already. This slide right here shows the TPT rates for the cities with a population over 10,000. Right now, there are 91 cities in Arizona that have a TPT rate. They range anywhere from 1.5% for Gilbert and Chandler, all the way up to 4.5% for South Tucson. Now, if you notice, South Tucson is not on the list. That's because their population is below 10,000. So these are the 44 cities that have a population over 10,000, basically the larger cities in Arizona. There are 6 towns in Arizona that have a tax rate of 4%. On here, there are 2 that are listed, Chino Valley and San Luis. So those are 2 of the higher ones that are on the list at 4%. Now, the red bar is where we currently are, which is 2.33. So at this point, there are not only these 20 cities, but there are also 35 other cities less than 10,000 population, for a total of 55 cities that have a tax rate higher than Prescott Valley. So right now we're in the lower part of, I guess, the middle third as it comes to tax rates. Now, we're proposing at this point to go up to 2.83, like Larry had indicated, which is the green bar. So we are, yes, it is. Right now, there will be still 11 cities on this slide, plus 25 other cities less than 10,000. So there's 36 cities at this point that have a tax rate higher than us. Now, you can see the names at the bottom. I know they're very hard to read, but they have, and some of them have little asterisks next to them. The ones with the little asterisks represent that those have a property tax. It's a general purpose property tax. As Larry had indicated, the town does not have a property tax, either primary or general purpose or secondary. Now, if there was a secondary tax in some of these cities, I did not include that in my analysis because those taxes are dedicated for a specific purpose, typically debt service. So I left that information off of this slide. This slide right here represents the total TPT collected for the fiscal year 2013-14. This shows only 25 of the 40 cities. I excluded Tucson and Phoenix because if I left them on here, it would distort the slide and it'd be very hard to read. So I excluded Tucson and Phoenix from the slide. So you can see it starts with Cottonwood that has 11.7 million. Then as our red bar there, that's 13.4 million is what we collected in 13-14. The green is what we're proposing. So based on 13-14, we're going to collect, we would have collected, if everything was held the same, we would have collected around 16.3. So it's just slightly under $3 million. Now, when we look at 14-15, we've had a growth in our TPT collections. So we're looking at, we're forecasting a little over 3 million, probably around 3.1 at this point, with additional revenues coming in. Now this slide right here shows the various cities of the top 44, and there's a 25 here listed, that have a general purpose property tax. It ranges anywhere from Sierra Vista that has 390,000 all the way up to Phoenix that has 145 million. And the reason why that I included this slide in the presentation, because as a general purpose, these cities basically are allowed to use this money to support or supplement their general fund. So not only do they also have their TPT revenues, their state share revenues, they also have a property tax that can be used for most likely specific purposes like police, fire, maybe libraries, things like that. So, but it is, again, I think it's important to note that it does supplement their general fund in these cases. Now, what I try to do on this slide is to factor in the property taxes that each of the cities collect. So you can see the I don't know what actually that color is, the pink or whatever the color is there, but rust. That is a portion of the property tax that I added on top of their tax rate. So you can see that at this point, The red bar is where we are now. There were 20 cities on this slide, or at the very beginning, there was 20 cities that were ahead of us. Right now, and when I add in the property tax, it goes to 27 cities. So you can see there are more cities have now are you being able to use their money for general fund purposes. And then the green bar, you can see it's moved back again compared to the other cities. There are now 4 other additional cities. The most notable is Maricopa, who basically collects about 50% of their revenues come from property tax and 50% come from their sales tax. Queen Creek, some of the other ones you can see that have jumped ahead of us. On this last slide, it's kind of hard to read, and I apologize for that, but you can see the name of this is a slide where basically it's TPT collections per capita. You can see next to the name, you can see the population, how many people live in that community. The point that I'm trying to make on this is that, again, when you look at our TPT collections on a per capita basis, we rank lower among a lot of the cities. So if you take into consideration Sedona, they're at almost $1,200 per capita. And then you look at even the Scottsdales and even at Prescott. Prescott is at $700 per capita. Right now, we are at $327 per capita. Now, some of the reasons for that, Sedona and Cottonwood, which is at the top, basically there's a couple reasons for that. One is they have a higher tax rate. So that's obviously going to generate more revenues. They both have a 3% tax rate. The other part is, especially Sedona, it's more of a tourism area. Tourism generates a lot of revenues for that community. With tourism, typically comes hotel motels, which in a lot of these cities, they could have a higher tax rate than their standard 3%. They could actually have a 5 or 6% tax rate for hotel motels, which also would generate additional revenues for their community. Some of the other examples and reasons why, or like in Prescott also. Prescott's a little bit of a combination of both. It has an established retail base that especially their cars and they have a lot of dealerships. That has a major impact on their per capita. Like Larry mentioned, a lot of these cities, almost all of these cities, have a residential rental tax, and they also have commercial lease. That also will increase the per capita for a lot of these cities. So we are further down. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think our commercial base, our retail base is growing. I think we're doing a great job. But as we are compared to some of the other areas, we are behind in a lot of these other areas as it relates to that. So with that, I gave you just a very brief overview of what I discussed last Thursday. And at this point, I'll just try to answer any questions that you might have.
Got a question?
I just have all kinds of comments tonight. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to mention that I don't know if it was mentioned, but a lot of the cities and towns in our state, they have increased their tax, their gas tax, or made a revenue source within their own towns, and are able to maintain their roads also that way. There are so many things that other cities and towns are taking on themselves to do because, honestly, the state it's just not there. We have to take a hold of our own communities and do the best we can. And we've been very conservative, I think, as you can see through all of these shows of the way that things are done and everything. We've been very conservative in trying to make this work for the best for all of us. And I really want you to know that. It's important. I know that I have talked to a lot of you today, and I want you to know your comments, your emails, they don't ever go unread, and I always try to reach back to you. But I do thank you for reaching out. I do thank you for showing up, and I do want you to know we care about everything and we care about our community.
Thank you, Mary. Any other? Steve, you got a comment?
Question. Bill, could you tell us how much more tax revenue we've gotten since like Walmart and all these other stores have opened, and how much we're expected to have more next year when all this stuff on 69 opens up?
Boy, it's hard to. Let's see if I have any information that would give me. Walmart by far was a huge revenue generator. That's for sure. Now, not only did it bring in revenues, but it also kind of took some revenues away from some of the other businesses, and especially in that surrounding area. So, but a net, it definitely generated some revenues. So we probably, in a retail, we probably saw a 10 to 12% increase in just the retail category alone as a result of that. Now, most of the businesses over in Crossroads at this point we've been collecting for them for probably 9 months to a year already. Most of the other ones that are coming in are not what I would consider significant revenue generators. But again, that 12 to 14, 15% increase in retail would also already include some of those businesses already. So yes, to your point, those businesses have generated a lot of revenues, have brought a lot of additional revenues into the town. Last year was probably the largest, the most TPT that we've collected in the history of the town. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, but.
That answered it for me. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments? Bill, thank you. Good presentation. What I'd like to do is eventually open this up to the public for their comments. But first, I'd like to go through the council and hear each one of their comments. Maybe we can start with the vice mayor.
Well, I think it's been made very clear the need that we have for this increase. As I mentioned last week, like everyone else in the town, I pay taxes as well, and I'm not anxious to pay more taxes. But, I know circumstances have hit us the way they've hit everybody else. The cost of doing business for the town has increased. So along with the increase in sales tax revenues that we've seen, our costs have gone up. Also, what people may assume that we've seen a lot of increase in revenues, but a lot of people these days are going to the internet to do a lot of their shopping. So we're not seeing the sales tax revenues that one might expect. And as Bill mentioned, a lot of what we're seeing in stores like Walmart and Kohl's are dollars moving from other stores to those stores. So it all hasn't really evened out yet. So I think it's been made very clear to us that there's definitely a need with our streets, and certainly a need with our public safety that we need to address. And this is not something that we can wait for years to ponder and discuss and finally make a move. I think it's time now that we make these moves. It's not going to get better with time, and it's not going to get any easier with time. I think we simply have to make the moves now and take the action that we need to take.
Thank you. Laura?
I'm going to try to represent my age group, which primarily lives on Social Security, which I do with the small stipend that I get for serving. I was absolutely against this, and I had an incident that I haven't shared with anybody here. I was going down Florentine at the speed limit, and if you know how bad Florentine is, and I thought I had done damage to my car. And I realized that had I damaged my car in that pothole, I didn't have the money to fix it. And that made me really stop and look at this situation. In that moment, I finally got it about the roads. If we had property tax, if we had renter's tax, I would agree with those of you who are so concerned. But we are very limited here in the income that goes into our general fund to manage easily. So what we do is manage efficiently. And if you don't know it, our community is recognized not only through Yavapai County but other counties about how well we manage, because most of them do have property tax, they do have rental tax. And when I'm at NACOG meetings where there's 4 counties represented there, it's very frequently that I'm asked, how in the world do you do that? Well, we finally reached the point where we were stretched as far as we could stretch. And I want to repeat what our town manager said earlier. In 2007, our budget was $111 million. We barely managed $72 million, and it will not cover all of these urgent needs. I'm not good at math, but I'm trying to figure out when I've spent $1,000 and we had a ½ cent increase, I think that's somewhere $5. Put that into perspective to me trying to repair a car when I don't have the funds to do that. And many other senior citizens like myself. We are doing preventive maintenance with this proposal.
Thank you. Marty?
Yeah, as been repeated, we have only 2 streams of income, impact fees and sales tax. Back in 2007, when our budget was $111 million, more than half of that was from impact fees. We haven't reached those levels yet. Yes, it's true, we have additional income from sales tax due to the growth of our commercial areas. Okay, so that is compensating for what we are now trying to get back in impact fees. Also, as a result of the increased sales tax that we've been collecting from the new commercial businesses, this year it afforded us the ability to give our employees a 2% raise, 3% raise, whatever, I think that was the number, okay? And they have not had a raise since 2007. And I don't have to tell those of you out there that our cost of living in the area, I mean, everything is going up, and when everything's going up and your salary isn't, that makes things tight and tough. So we've examined these numbers, and when I'm out there speaking to, everybody out in the community, the 2 things that they keep bringing up is we need better roads and we need more police out there. I mean, I keep hearing people say, I've been living on my street for 5 years and I haven't seen a police officer come down that block yet. So this will allow us to do the 2 things that our community has been asking for. We're going to give them better roads. We're going to give better road maintenance. We're going to get back on that 5-year cycle. One thing that Norm pointed out to us a while ago was if we go 10 years without taking care of the chip seal and overlayment, then we're going to start having to repair the concrete underneath, which is the underlayment, and that's a lot more expensive than doing the chip seal. So, like I said, we've examined these numbers, and we are, we have concerns the same as you do regarding how the money gets spent. But this is necessary, and I know most of us are going to go ahead and vote for it. So I'm not saying it's a rubber stamp, but it's necessary, and we need it, and I hope you understand it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Mary?
I think I said enough.
She thinks she said enough. That's unique. Mike?
Well, I do want to mention that I appreciate the people here tonight to listen and get a perspective as to the logic of what we're going through and why we're addressing this increase. And as you know, I think we're one of many entities or government municipalities that contribute to your tax rate every year. And considering that, I think Prescott Valley is relatively small compared to the state and the county. And as you heard in some of the information we've shared is that we'll probably be in the middle. I think Prescott is going to be a little lower, while Chino is definitely a little higher. And one thing I feel is very serious that as a council member is that we are stewards of this community in terms of working with the tax dollars we have to make our community a place where it is a healthy and safe place to live. And as we've heard, and I think one of the terms that we've talked about is deferred, and we have deferred a lot since 2007. And if anything, what we've seen is that we're not going to be at that same level. Whether in the future we will, I kind of doubt it. It's just what they call the new normal. So we've survived the recession beginning in 2007 with multi-year budgets, as Mary had mentioned, and we've lived within those budgets. And we've done that without any increases in taxes. And another thing is that we've talked about property tax and will not depend on another tax to create the resources necessary to continue to fund our streets and roads and our public safety. And especially aren't going to depend on property tax as far as I would think way past my lifetime. So we are at a crossroads, as I hope you understand now, that if we don't do it now, I'm not sure when would be an appropriate time to do it. And considering inflation rates now versus in the future, I think this is probably the most reasonable time to consider this. While we have an opportunity to utilize the low interest rate or inflation rates that probably will go up in a couple of years. So putting this off and deferring again, I don't think is an option for us. And as you've heard, we've depended on grants from the federal, state, and county level, and we've been very fortunate in that regard, but funds are shrinking. And I think as time goes on, we'll be lucky if we can renew these funds to continue some of the revenue we've received, especially in terms of the roads. And I know the police department has been fortunate as well to receive funding from the federal level too. And we do remember that sales tax is something that affects us as residents, but also people in our region, as well as tourists. So it's something that will I guess, divvy out or allocate among the same people that come to visit us, as well as regional folks who come to shop at places like Walmart. So we need to address, I think, the infrastructure and the safety needs required today rather than wait until a crisis. And I think that's always something that tends to spur us on, is if we have a crisis. And when we talk about the response rate of our police department, we're always talking about the fact that there is somebody available. And my fear is someday that we're going to have an incident where all our officers are being utilized and we may have other needs that we just can't respond to in 5 point whatever seconds. So that's something I think we need to remember. And our vision, my vision is at least, is to promote the community in a way that's a health and education resource and a place for families to live in our region. And we've used a blueprint in that regard to tell you, the community, our citizens, where we're going, and that's the general plan, the 2025 general plan. And that was something that was voted upon in our last election, and it was approved by our citizens in terms of a plan as to where we're going in the future and how we're going to do that. So we're not doing this in a vacuum, and obviously there is need. And what we've heard as well is the population projections put Prescott Valley now as one of the largest communities in Yavapai County. And I have a commitment, I think, as well as the council, to our residents that it'll be the safest community in Yavapai County. So I wanted to say that, I take this responsibility seriously. We are stewards, and I'm looking forward to, I think, the responses I had that this is needed, this is the time to do something about improving our situation relative, especially to our roads and to our public safety.
Thank you, Mike. Steve?
So first off, I feel like this was really rushed. I didn't even hear a word about the tax until last week, and that bothers me. The next thing is 4 of us sitting up here right now, when we were running for town council, and Mr. Arbs back there can verify, all said that we wouldn't raise taxes. We straight up looked at people in the face and told them that we would not raise taxes. So I just wanted to remind everybody about that. I believe that raising this tax is going to hurt the poor. It's going to hurt small businesses. And Laura Lee said, it's just $5. Well, a new family raising a kid, $5 could make or break them. That could mean the difference in putting food on the table or not. The last time we discussed budgets, we had our budget meetings. Mary and I really wanted new officers. We were told that we didn't need new officers. We were told that our town is one of the safest towns and we don't need it. So why do we need it now? Now, I do believe we need new officers, but I just want to know what changed. Another thing, I was told when we were running for council that we had $40 million in the bank. There's no $40 million in the bank, or we wouldn't be asking people to raise taxes. And that really bothers me. I want to know where it went. And I have a solution for this also. I'm not going to come to you and just say no without a solution. So we could go to every city like Sheila Polk did with that marijuana resolution and have the cities vote and say that we want our HERF money back. That would fix this problem right off the bat. If every city in the state stood up to the state legislators and said, hey, we want our money back, they're going to have to give it back to us.
Thank you. Now, comment, Mary?
Oh, Stephen, we did do a resolution, and we did serve the state with those resolutions about taking our HERF funds, and they just took them anyway. Every year. They take them every year. Every year.
Well, when did we do a resolution?
We did it a couple of years ago, if I remember right. We have it on file, but we did do one, and they just take it. That's what they do, and they take our shared revenue funds for our roads, and they fund DPS, Department of Public Safety. That's what they do.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, comments are very good. Things have changed. It used to be a police officer badge and a gun. Today they have computers and safety vests. Their car and equipment they need in their car. You don't get along anymore with a regular car. They have to have a SUV to have room enough for their stuff. Roads, even our signal lights. Used to be a stop sign. Now they got signal lights. And you're looking at $250,000 to $750,000 for those. But that isn't the end of the cost. You have to maintain them, and you have to pay the electric bill every month. So everything's changing. Our roads, streets, everything has changed. This little old dirt road that we used to have forget that. You have blacktop. Even a chip seal designed for 200 cars a day, 25 miles an hour, to last 5 years. Well, we've done a lot better than that. We've double layered and triple layered, and we've been getting a lot of years out of it. But the stuff is starting to dry out now. That was from the mid-'90s. So we do need to maintain it, but hopefully also upgrade as we move along. So there's going to be a lot of changes. Now, I think if council doesn't mind, I know there's some of the people in the audience that would like to comment. I'd like to limit it to 3 minutes and only one time up. We don't want somebody to, lock in the microphone for the whole night. 3 minutes, who wants to be? Yeah, sir, come on up. You'll have to give your name, if you would, for the sake of our town clerk records. Good to see you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Dr. Serge Montez,
good to meet you.
A father of 6 kids, a ecclesiastical leader in the community, small business owner, and I try to be an engaged citizen with all of that going on. I appreciate the things that were presented tonight. I think in contrast to what our good Vice Mayor said, a case hasn't been made for raising the sales tax. I think a case has been made for some needs that we have in our community, but it doesn't have to be met by raising the sales tax. And I think if we put it in those terms, we lock ourselves into a pattern. And I think we need to change the culture in our community. I appreciate Mr. Marshall and remembering the fact that there was a promise made to not raise taxes. It ought to be reevaluating some of the incentives that we've provided, and we've talked about the increase in population in our community by some 20% in the last 5 years, I think, is what Chief said. We have invested, as this council has said, it made investments in bringing big businesses to the community. I think we need to evaluate how those investments have paid off. With the increase in retailers and the increase in population, if there hasn't been an increase in or corresponding increase in our revenues, and if there hasn't been, then the council needs to kind of reevaluate the way that we're investing, and where we're putting these monies if these investments aren't paying off and are necessitating us to raise taxes. I think the cronyism that we could be caught getting involved in needs to be looked at and seriously considered. I love our community. I love this town. It's a great place to be living and raising my family. And we've done well at maintaining a relatively low tax rate. I don't want us to slip out of that and think that that's how we become progressive and become a big city. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate that. Anyone else want to comment? Yes, Tom. We have two others. Bob, you next, and then that pretty lady next to you.
Tom Steele, 4481 North Sheridan, Prescott Valley. I must say I'm shocked that this is being brought to us so quickly, so fast. It's almost like an emergency measure from past councils that I've seen. I moved here in 2003, and to address some of these issues, I'd like to say that, yes, the chip sealing should be done at 5 years, but since I've been here, we had some good years, and it still was stretched from 5 to 7 years. Now I guess it's 7 to 9 years or something like that, but we're really getting by. I think our maintenance crews really do a fantastic job in responding to our repairs. So I will take that 20 minutes that Norm spent describing all the proper ways to chip seal and use blacktop as neutralized. As a senior citizen, I got a 1.7% increase for this year. You people are contemplating without a public venue. I heard about this yesterday on the radio, KYCA, while I was painting my house. It's the first knowledge I had that this was going to happen. You're going to be raising the price, the tax on groceries that people have to have by 21.4%. 50 cents added to $2.33 That's a 21.4% increase. We like to have car dealers. We got a wonderful car dealer that's represented here tonight. How much is this going to drive people to go someplace else? Enough people go down to Maricopa County to buy a new car because it's a big ticket item. Do we want to drive those sales out of Prescott Valley? Do we want other people to defect? We have a drawing point here by having our sales tax for what it is. We have a good police force. They respond well. They are trained well. We have had, and I am absolutely disappointed in Mr. Tarkowski, who I've been bragging to everybody about our recovery that we've had, because he was such a brilliant manager of our finances. The first town to put the brakes on a declining economy in 2006 or 7 was Mr. Tarkowski. Okay? Now, the presentation on our sales tax basically was based on just comparing us with everybody else. Well, I remind you one thing. Taxes to me is revenue to government. You take $1 out of my pocket and put it in government's pocket, that's one less dollar I have to spend. And I think you people ought to take at least 30 days, defer this vote for at least 30 days, let public comment have a chance to percolate through the community, because it hasn't had a chance. Then, if you have to do anything, I would say the only thing that I would suggest, since you guys don't work for the town manager, it's we the people, you work for the people of Prescott Valley, that at the end of that 30 days, that if you do anything, you put it to a vote of the people in an upcoming election. Do we want to tax ourselves an additional 50 cents, an additional half a penny, or 21.4% more for our groceries and our sales taxes? Prescott put it to a vote, and theirs was only 0.55 cents. In 50 cents, you're going to slam this and possibly vote on this tonight to raise our grocery tax by 21.4% without the benefit of the people having good exposure to it? Or a vote? Please think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Bob?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and all the council members. My name is Bob Hoagland. I live in Dewey, 831 North Old Chisholm Trail. I work at Earnhardt Liberty Key. I want to make it clear I'm not representing the Earnhardt organization in this. I'm just another citizen. None of us want to pay more taxes. I think you guys have made the need for some of these improvements crystal clear. What's most troubling for, I think, a lot of us out here is that you guys would just rule on this without the citizens having ample time for some commentary, without the possibility that we could vote on it, without exploring other ways to generate this revenue. The concern that this would impact how much revenue that the city's able to collect with lost sales. And groceries are one thing. I don't know how many of us compare the price of a can of soup when we go buy groceries, but I can guarantee everybody that comes to buy a car from me knows that that extra $5 per thousand means that a $20,000 car costs $100 more. Every one of them will drive to Phoenix to save $100. Every one of them to save $100. They don't care about keeping their tax dollars on the hill and benefiting the community they live in if they can put $100 more in their pocket.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
That's for big ticket items. Ma'am?
My name is Jessica O'Connor, and I didn't want to be here because I missed my daughter's volleyball game at Bradshaw. But anyways, a couple things I want to point out. One, I think we should not use the 2007 budget as a jumping point. because perhaps 2007 was inflated by a number of houses that wasn't realistic. So we should maybe scale it back to 2005 or a different number that we need to be using. Like some people said, why not a renter's tax? Why not some other things? We need to explore different options instead of just rushing to do this. I want to know, I have a couple questions that I want answered before I would feel comfortable going forward. One, is Walmart on a discounted tax rate? And for how long? Our streets and police are important. In fact, they might be one of the most important things that this city council could do. If that's the case, then where is the $74 million going right now? Some of it is going to police and some of it is going to streets, but where's the rest going? Because that probably is your main responsibilities. So apparently some of the budget's being used for things that are not necessary. Again, if we were to raise taxes, should there be a time limit on it? Like this will be raised for 4 years and then it'll stop. You know, I don't like the idea of let's just raise it because somebody, when you guys are all gone, somebody else is going to come by 5, 6, 7 years. Let's raise it again. And it always goes up and up and up. Okay. What role do bad decisions of the past play? Like, are we promising a certain portion of the tax that we're collecting to developers from past deals? And when do those deals expire? Also, what if we have another economic downturn? What happens then? Will the money from this go somewhere else? Will it stay here? Curious. And again, reminding that some of you said you weren't going to raise taxes. I think it was Marty Grossman, Richard Anderson, Stephen Marshall, and it was probably somebody else, but I don't know. I don't remember who. And somebody said something about, passing this on to our children, but I think passing on debt and taxes to our children is really more concerning than a few potholes in the road. And I have children, 5 of them, still at home. So I'd rather drive over a pothole than pass on greater taxes. And it's not just for this. This is for our state and our country as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Jessica?
Mr. Mayor, can I just say something real quick?
Feel free there, Marty.
At no time did I ever say that I would not raise taxes. That came from only 2 people. And one of them is on the council and one of them is not.
Okay, Craig. Welcome, Craig.
My name is Craig Arps. This kind of a lot of the points I wanted to make have already been hit, but mainly my main point is that it just feels like the shoe is on the wrong foot here, because kind of as some other people said, it's like you're up there lecturing to us about why this is needed. You've made a presentation about the needs, and I think we're all aware of the needs. We live in the community too. We see that. The problem is that you haven't made the case to us why a tax increase is the only answer. Why there's nothing else in the budget that could possibly be cut. You presented the needs very well, but you didn't present the budget and why everything on that budget is absolutely necessary at this time. Why that couldn't be where we find the extra money to do these things that we obviously need. So you're telling us this is what we need, this is necessary. You're talking to us, not hearing from us. Things have gotten a little backwards here. That's my opinion. And this is the kind of thing, in my opinion, it's a big deal to raise taxes. That's the kind of thing that should probably be put to a vote, honestly. Or at the very least, give us more than a week's notice. I mean, I'm sure this has probably been something that maybe some of you have talked about before. I don't doubt you guys were considering all your options and that you're very convinced this is a good idea. Okay, I'm not questioning your motives here. The problem is the citizens aren't convinced. We've only had a week. I mean, if we were really watching the agendas and noticed that it happened to be on the last work study meeting, that's the most time we've had to think about this, to process this, and maybe ourselves go through the budget and decide if we feel like everything in there is necessary. So, I mean, really, this is, like I said, it's kind of gotten things a little bit backwards. So my request is put it on the ballot, or at least give us some more time. but it sounds like most of you have already made up your minds. So it's a little disappointing to come up here and try and give public comment when you've already made up your mind without public comment. So maybe next time we could have public comment before you make up your mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Mayor.
Yes, Laura?
I'm only going to speak for myself, but as soon as I became aware of this, I was speaking to citizens. I was getting their input. And there were many of them I spoke with.
Good. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My better half already spoke. My name's Boyd O'Connor.
Boyd O'Connor?
Yeah, Boyd O'Connor, yep. And it kind of reminds me of one of the first principles in government that was put into place a long time ago, and it's called checks and balances. This kind of thing is when you guys hear from other governmental agencies and you can respond and give them immediate money, I don't think that's a good thing. I think that that I agree with a lot of the other comments that have been made in that, this does need more dialogue. I heard about it yesterday listening to KYCA as well, listening to Larry. And I didn't quite know what to think at first, and I don't think a lot of the citizens know exactly what to think as well. We're kind of in the middle of do we, sustain the police department and the roads, where a lot of us would like to, but there aren't all the answers haven't been given that we have questions about. So as there's, questions about the long-term effects of this, expiration of taxes, I think that's a great thing to put into place. Taxes should expire. It shouldn't be put on as a burden to members of society. So I would ask that you guys reconsider. Do not move hastily on with any decision. I think that's bad modus operandi. And I would appreciate that from my point of view. So thank you.
Thank you, Boyd. Appreciate it. Reed, did you have a comment? Anyone else? Reed, come on up. It's good to see you, Reed.
I came here tonight because I'm 1,000% against increasing the taxes. More than 1,000%. I hate tax increases just like everybody else does. I've heard a lot tonight, and some of us changed my mind. I understand where we need more income. I also want every department in this town to have everything they need. Not necessarily everything they want, but everything they need to do the job. We all depend on them for that. If there were a tax increase, I'd really appreciate it having a limit on it. 5 years, whatever it is, a limit on the taxes. Get the streets caught back up. Get them back on the plan. And like the lady said much better than I do, comparing this to 2007 is like comparing my dinner last night to Thanksgiving dinner. Things were crazy in 2007. In 1 month, my house was worth X number of dollars. 6 months later, it's worth 3 times that. No, it isn't. That's just inflated. That was the crash of the economy. And I don't want us to crash. And I know each and every one of you people are concerned about our town. I know, and these guys too, I didn't mean to leave you out. But we really need to revisit the tax thing and have a limit on it if we possibly can. I don't think any of you went about this lightly. I think every one of you did soul searching. I think every one of you are 100% convinced you're doing the right thing. And I trust each and every one of you. So whatever you go with, I'll agree with, but I won't like it, probably. That's all.
Reed, you're a good man. We appreciate that. Anyone else got any comments? I know, do you have a comment, Mary? No. I know that all of us have squirmed over it. Yes, come on up, Ed. It's Ed, isn't it?
My name is Eddie LaFaso. I live in Prescott Ridge. It's just I hope it's not out of line, but just a suggestion on where to find more taxes. Arizona has E-Verify, and I don't know if it's enforced here because I've been to a couple of restaurants and stuff. The manager doesn't even know what it is. I asked her, I said, "You ever hear of E-Verify?" She said, "What's that?" A manager of a, and there's department stores. I think there's a lot of, I don't know who would go after it, but there's a lot of illegals that should be paying taxes in plain English. Maybe somebody can go that route. It might be out of line. Forgive me. I don't know.
Ed, thank you.
It might be out of line.
No, it's not. I think all the comments were justified. Any other comments? Looks like there'll be no more comments. Council, have any additional comments? Truthfully, Mary, Laura?
Reed, I can't thank you enough for your comments. This is a situation, it's kind of a Solomon choice in some respects. And I guarantee you that I've missed sleep. And I've had a lot of arguments with Larry. Well, 2 or 3, not a lot.
That's an everyday thing, Laura.
You need to understand that Reed put it really well, and thank you. And Mary thanked all of you for being here, and I want to do that as well. I'm actually disappointed there aren't more. Doesn't that bother you that there aren't more? There was radio, there was newspaper, there was work study. This has been out there for a couple of weeks, people. And interestingly, only one person that I spoke to is here tonight. What does that say?
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, Marty?
Yeah, I would just, for those that say that they only got recently noticed, our agendas for work study and regular meetings are posted a week in advance. So it's on the internet, it's in the paper, it's available to you. So all this information has been posted for at least 2 weeks. And because of open meeting laws, we're not allowed to discuss this in back rooms. So all of the presentations that we have seen and heard have been in the public eye. So there are no backdoor deals going on here. You know, it's not an easy decision for us to make, but it's a necessary one. And our budget meetings are held early in the year, and they're all, again, the public is invited to some of the information that we give out regarding the budgets. It's available for open meetings, and we do allow people to talk about it. But it's a process that we start in November and December, and we don't vote on it until June. So there's a lot of information that's out there if you want to take your time and pay attention to it. Telling us that you only got it last minute is false. If the information is out there and you're able to respond to it, and we will listen.
Jessica, surely. That's all right. We can't take a second one with me, but we'll council. Yeah, and we'll be around after the meeting. Anyone else from the council? If not, even if we do have a motion on this, it will not go into effect until there's a second hearing, which would be, 30 days from now, Larry? Ivan? How much?
The ordinance will be in front of the council at 2 different meetings, this meeting and then 2 weeks.
It'll be coming up again in 2 weeks. Okay, council, have anyone motion or anything else?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to read ordinance number 811 by title only on 2 separate occasions and place the same on final passage.
Second, anyone?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would you set the vote, Diane? I'm going to say yes, Diane. Yes, Diane, I can't tell.
Yes, Mayor?
I don't get it on my screen.
I understand that. What you said you wish to vote how?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I gathered from you the first time. Okay.
So what is it?
And the vote was 6-1 with
6-1.
Council Member Marshall voting nay.
The dissenting vote, okay. Now with that, Diane, I would ask you to read the ordinance number 811 by title only for the first reading.
Ordinance number 811. An ordinance of the Mayor and Common Council of the Town of Prescott Valley, a municipal corporation of Arizona, amending Chapter 8A Transaction Privilege Tax of the Town Code to increase the tax rate on certain categories of transactions from 2.33 to 2.83%, establishing an effective date, providing for existing contracts, providing penalties for violations, providing that if any other portion of this ordinance is held invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, the validity of the remaining portion shall not be affected, providing that all other articles, sections, subsections, and regulations of Chapter 8A not herein amended shall remain in full force and effect, and approving that this ordinance shall be effective 30 days after its passage and approval according to law.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, with that, we move on to number 10B, consideration of awarding a construction contract to Asphalt Paving and Supplies Incorporated in an amount of up to $298,588 for the Windsong Drive and pedestrian improvement. That's Norm, are you going to comment?
Yes, I'm ready, Mayor, if we can have it shown overhead. Did have just a couple slides for the benefit of the audience tonight and people at home watching. This particular project, I think we've talked in great detail last week. This is a project that's been long awaited for pedestrian enhancements along Windsong Drive from some of the big trip generators in some of the apartment complex north of Lakeshore in order to get some of the attractions down in Florentine, some of the grocery stores and the like. So funding source for this is, as you see on the overhead screen for the project sign, is a community development block grant. This is a competitive grant. The town has been successful. I think this has been the 5th year in a row. This is competitive monies. You have to have a viable project that actually meets all the criteria with some income levels and viability of the project. So Ryan Judy's been very successful getting these particular grant monies. We've gone through the grant process. This particular project was vetted, and we moved forward with design. So staff moved forward with design and sent the particular project out for bid. Dave and Associates, through the town engineering agreement, did the design of the project, and we went out for bids and closed bids. And as in your council action, you can see the particular bid results that we had very good interest from the contracting community. And actually, 2 local contractors were very, very close that worked quite a bit for Prescott Valley. But Asphalt Paving Supply is the apparent low bidder. And there was well within the engineering estimate. And we look forward to moving forward with these particular improvements. So next slide, you saw the project sign of the particular contractor and the funding source. This project, our overview exhibit, just basically shows the limits of the particular sidewalk and lane widening improvements, which is basically just on the east side from Windsong. It's about 1,300 feet as depicted here south of Lakeshore and connects up to some of the existing infrastructure in the particular areas you see in the exhibit. So as I mentioned, we've got good competition for the project. Staff's looking forward to recommending to council to the low bid from Asphalt Paving Supply for $298,588 for this project. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We talked about this at length at the work study
Questions,
last week.
anyone? Mike?
No, I just want to make a comment that we've reviewed this and studied this probably the last 6 months that I can recall, and it's finally coming to fruition. So we're looking forward to getting that done and connecting our medical corridor with some of the residences in the hospital further north. So, thank you.
Mary, do you have anyone else? Any comments? We've studied this one for months.
Yes, we have, Mayor.
And you've done a great job of presenting it.
Looking forward to moving to construction.
And it's a CDBG grant, so it doesn't mean, it means it's all grant money. I'm ready for a motion. In fact, I'd encourage
it. Motion to approve the amount of construction contract to the lowest responsive bidder, Asphalt Paving and Supply, Inc., in the amount of up to $298,588 by electronic.
And I'll second that.
Okay,
Mayor.
with a motion and a second, would you set the vote, Diane?
How do you wish to vote, Mayor?
Yes.
We have a unanimous vote.
Unanimous. Thank you, Diane. Okay, with that, Norm, you can go to work on it.
Very good, Mayor. We'll get started right away.
Crank up those machines. We'll move on to number C, consideration of approving the purchase of software and upgraded licensing. Attached Wonderware West quote in the amount of $18,382.43. Neil?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Well, as you can see, we are looking to upgrade our SCADA licensing agreement and software for the controls for our water and wastewater system. Actually, this one's for the water, but essentially we're upgrading software, and I don't know if I can say anything else that will make it any clearer than that or provide any additional detail. So I guess if you have any questions, I can try to answer those. And
Are you going on the radio tomorrow?
Don't even try to teach Mr. Whiting how to operate it, okay?
No way.
Mike, you got a comment?
No, I just want to comment again that we've talked about this and the SCADA system for seems like many years, but I think it's an investment well worth the effort, and looking forward again to getting this implemented very soon.
Mary, you got a comment?
No, Mayor.
Anyone else? Comments, questions, motions, promotions?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of software and upgraded licensing for the attached Wonderware West quote in the amount of $18,382.43.
I'll second that, Mayor.
You have the motion and a second. Diane, would you set the vote?
No, there it is.
I'll be yes.
Did I hear you say yes, Mayor? Thank you. I thought I did.
Seven, yes, no, 0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Neil, get it. You know it's going to help you. Okay, we have one more item, and that's comments from the public. Consideration and discussion of general unscheduled comments from the public. Those wishing to address the council need not request permission in advance. Any such remarks shall be limited to the council as a whole and not to any member thereof. Such remarks shall be limited to 5 minutes unless additional time is granted by the mayor. Kirk, any comments? No? Anyone else? I guess that's just about 0 comments. One more thing we all hate, and that's the to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, please.
Okay, a motion to adjourn. A second, anyone? Second. Okay, you got the motion and the second. Set the vote, Diane? Yes.
Mayor votes yes.
And the meeting is adjourned. And thank you all for
Let me
putting
look
up
at
with
my
that.